Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center. Welcome to Knife AQ number 23, the series where I answer all your knife questions, whether they're sharp or dull. Got some fun stuff. As always this week, we're talking different knife grinds, how they stack up next to each other, some cool colors, some comparisons of a couple models. Let's get into it. All right, housekeeping right at the top. Thank you everyone for submitting your questions in the comments section on previous week's videos. And if you want a chance to get one of your questions featured, just leave them down there as well. We'll be coming through there and picking out some good ones. Not all the good ones. There's honestly too many good ones for me to answer everything, but keep trying and hopefully we'll be able to get to you. With that in mind, first thing is a response to some comments that came in. Last week I showed a knife with a blue handle, kind of similar to this one. This is a Civivi Elementum here. And I talked about the color being very inoffensive and something that might fly under the radar, and I actually got a little bit of flack. And I'm going to, because this guy was a good sport after I responded to him, I'm going to use this guy's comment. It's from the number one Nate Dog. It says, "Since when did a color become threatening? I'm liking the video, but some of the BS that seems like it must be a concern to some people is absolutely ridiculous." So, the reason I like to talk about colors like that, well, first of all, I say carry whatever you want. I'm certainly going to keep carrying whatever I want. But the thing is, like, we live in a day and age where, and I wish this weren't so, but sometimes if you pull a knife out, it could be the guy next to you, it might raise some eyebrows. That's just what it is. That's not me passing judgment one way or the other. That's just reality. And the last thing, there's going to be certain times where the last thing you want to do is draw attention to yourself or anything like that. You just want to fly under the radar. So the bigger and badder and more tactical a knife looks, honestly, the more adverse the reaction's going to be in those scenarios. So the kind of more tame and, dare I say, cute a knife might look, the less likely it is to raise some eyebrows. So there's nothing wrong with that at all. Sometimes that is, the best tactical choice you could actually make if you're coming at it from that perspective. So that's why actually the Elementum and the Delica from Spyderco are two knives I like to recommend just in general for a few reasons. One, they got a 3-inch blade, so again, you're flying under the radar most places, and both of them have a nice selection of brighter colors, not just some stuff like OD green or tan or stuff like that. Some of that can still kind of scream tactical, but you've got some nice friendly colors there. So for certain situations, if that's what you need, then that's what you need. Yeah, just go for it. Interestingly though, orange, even though it's nice and bright, I tend to lump into the opposite category. This might be a little more attention grabbing rather than, seeming a little less threatening. Just because some people don't like hunting either, and there you go, very, very associated with hunting. But I like these unobtrusive colors. I like these kind of friendly colors because one thing, like I said, it's going to be less likely to raise an eyebrow, and you might even slowly start drawing someone in to the knife hobby who might be on the fence, and that's a good thing too. All right, next question is from Darren McGovern. It says, "What are your thoughts on the differences between the new CEO Flipper versus the LCK Plus or LCK Plus Large from CRKT?" All right, sure thing. I've got them both here in front of me, so I'll just kind of go through them, do a quick comparison between the two. There you go. Kind of similar profiles, as you can see. This is the just the standard LCK Plus. The Large is kind of another animal entirely. If you're going for price, the LCK, $32, CEO, $40. So both very affordable, but that LCK is going to be a little bit less. Now, both of these have ball bearing based pivots, but the LCK actually has a torsion bar assisted opening mechanism behind it as well, whereas the CEO is manual. Which is kind of interesting that there's that little added extra bit of mechanical complexity here, but it still comes in a little bit less. So in a way, the LCK is definitely the better bargain, I would say. Steels between the two are roughly the same. We've got an 8CR series steel on the LCK, which metallurgically is virtually identical to the AUS 8 used on the CEO. The only word of caution I'd say there, I don't think this actually applies to CRKT in general, but 8CR is just a standard that's out there. Anyone can make it. Aus 8, you know exactly the factory that's coming from because only one company out there makes that. So you can definitely always trust, you know, the quality of Aus 8, at least on the material side, pretty much, you know, across the board. Yeah, apart from that, like I said, very similar profiles. You've got G10 on the LCK versus glass reinforced nylon on the CEO. So again, a little bit more of a bargain there on the LCK. That said, I would personally still choose the CEO because of the closing action on an assist. Requires a little bit more effort sometime, even though, you know, the action is good and their new mechanism they introduced this year does have a bias towards close, but you still have to get past that point. Whereas the CEO still flips open great for me. I really like the action there. And it folds up even easier and actually kind of takes up even less room in the pocket. They're about the same closed length, just about, even though there's a little more thickness on the LCK. Not enough to make a difference most places though. They're very similar. I'd say honestly, if you don't care whether it's assisted or not, go with the LCK, it's a little bit cheaper. If that's the difference maker to you, go with the manual. There you go. Next question is from Jesse Shaw. Could you please tell me what a good farm/ranch knife, just a tough, durable knife, not just case, please? Sure. I'm looking at your punctuation there. It threw me off just a little bit. So I do know a few farmers in my life. I've got some very, very close family friends actually that farm. And so I'm gonna tell you what he carries. Obviously farming is not a very lucrative trade these days, at least not in the small family farm type of scenario. But this friend of mine has been carrying for years now a Buck 110, just the classic 110 with the wood inlays. We got ebony here with brass bolsters and that 420 HC blade. Because it just works. It's a solid knife, made in America, affordable these days, very affordable, 45 bucks for what you get here. And it just looks like a classic. He throws it on his belt pouch every morning and away he goes. He's like opening, you know, cutting chicken wire with it, opening straps, opening up boxes and crates even. You know, he's broken the tip a couple of times and reground it, but it's still going strong for him. Not to be overlooked. If you do want something a little more premium, they make versions of this with some upgraded steels. You could also go with something like the Cold Steel Broken Skull. A little bit thinner there, a lot thinner actually, so not quite as comfortable in the hand, but you've got a 4-inch S35 VN blade coming in about 95 bucks right now. Really nice. But as far as other options, I can only really kind of come at this question through the lens of my friends there. I don't have direct farming experience. Actually, I do have another farming friend who, again, it all depends on your scenario. This guy carries a Buck 110. My other buddy carries a modified Becker BK9 with him everywhere. Actually, it might have been a BK20, one of the two. But in any case, he carries a big fixed blade chopper with him. But anyway, what about you folks out there? I bow to anyone out there who works on a farm or a ranch. Let us know what you guys carry. I'd love to hear from you. All right, next is from PowerStroke 357. What are the benefits of a hollow grind as opposed to a flat grind and vice versa? Thinking more of high or full flat grinds. In my experience, both can be very efficient grinds for slicing and cutting. Generally speaking, are there any particular benefits or drawbacks to one grind versus the other? Yeah, sure. Let's get right into that, and I'll use that Buck and that Cold Steel I was just talking about. You've got a hollow grind on that Buck and a full flat on the Cold Steel. And the blade stock thickness is actually pretty much the same on these as well. And that's actually, what I'm gonna go through here are kind of generalizations because there's a lot of things that are gonna impact slicing performance beyond just the grind. For instance, how tall is that full flat grind? How wide or how thick is the blade stock to begin with? How high is the grind on that hollow grind? What's the diameter of the wheel that they use to cut out that concave shape? How thin is the edge? The list goes on. But in general, what's nice about a hollow grind is because so much more metal is removed behind the edge, it's a little steeper there. So over time, as you sharpen the knife more, the edge is gonna stay a little bit thinner than a comparable, again, a lot of variables, but over a comparable full flat grind, where it's, even though this is a high flat grind and it's still a nice steep angle, the more you go up, it's dealing with a little bit more of a wedge as you climb the height of that grind. On a knife like this with a high wear resistant steel, it's probably gonna be a long time before you get to something like that, but that is what's going on there. Now, the disadvantage of a hollow grind, especially if it's a hollow grind with a slightly thicker spine, is in some cuts, and typically where I've encountered this might be on thicker cardboard cuts. While it may be more efficient there behind the edge, as you push through, the angle as it kicks out at the top of the hollow grind is going to be more wider than something like on the full flat grind. So you're going to run into potentially a little bit more resistance there. For that reason, I tend to gravitate towards knives that have a full flat grind with a decently thin blade stock. That's kind of my favorite types of thing, because it's a little bit the best of both worlds. It stays fairly thin if you're starting with thin enough blade stock. It stays fairly thin as you sharpen it, and then you're not going to have that extra shoulder at the top to get through. Generalizations, of course, everything's going to be different. Obviously, the flat grind on that Broken Skull is going to be very different than the flat grind on this Benchmade Presidio 2 I've got right here. So you have to keep kind of all those moving parts in mind when thinking about whether this knife, you might like it better if it had a different grind on it, that sort of thing. All right, next is from Russ Hernandez. It says, I love these FAQs and I truly appreciate the education. Happy to share what I've learned over the years. My question is, does the locking type mechanism play a role in how smooth and easy a non-assisted blade deploys? If so, which lock type would aid in the quickest opening / least resistance, as well as one that would provide the greatest resistance? Sure, Presidio 2 here from Benchmade. For the least amount of resistance, I immediately think of a crossbar lock like Benchmade's Axis. Because when you pull that lock bar back, especially when it's broken in, some can be a little bit stiffer right out of the box, but that blade is just essentially free floating. I mean, you see it there. There's virtually very, very little resistance going on, which is why, especially on a big knife like this, it's real satisfying to kind of do that flick open and closed. And on the more resistance sides, I wouldn't go with like liner locks or frame locks. They're somewhere in the middle, but typically lockbacks tend to have a little bit more resistance because this is a perfect example, the classic buck. That lockback is essentially one giant leaf spring that engages with the tang of the blade. So it's essentially under tension against the tang. So even when you unlock it and start to close, it's still acting on that pivot. And this one actually could use a little bit of breaking in, but you tend to get a little more resistance as a result, which is one reason why you don't usually see stuff like ball bearings in the pivot of a lockback, because it's not going to make that much of a difference anyway because of that leaf spring. Now there are exceptions to that, and I will show you the Viper Turn, which is a lockback with ball bearings in the pivot. It kind of breaks the rules. And the smoothness of this, I mean, there's still a little resistance there because it is a lockback, but the smoothness is really, really nice. And it's one of the few lockbacks out there you can actually thumb flick open very easily and repeatably. There are a few lockback flippers out there that kind of split that leaf spring, but that's another story as well. But these turns are just so awesome. This particular one coming in like $230 with the ram horn scales on it, inlays. Just a fantastic knife. All right, next question is from Revival Giant. So I have a question in regards to extreme cold. And I live here in Canada. Where I live, it hits -41. Is that Celsius or Canadian? I don't know. Might be Fahrenheit, who knows? Either way, that's cold. He says, and my Benchmade 940-2 froze closed. Got one of those right here. I'm looking to switch back to a knife that isn't an Axis lock. Do you have any thoughts for an EDC folder for winter with extreme cold temps? Thanks, love the series. Thank you. So here you go. I can absolutely see where, especially if some moisture got in here or got frozen, that lock bar could get jammed up and might affect what you're going through there, or affect the action. Honestly, my first thought, I will show you some folders, but my first thought is go with a fixed blade. Since you like Benchmade, their 200 Puko would be a good option. It's a manageable enough size, and it has a completely overmolded handle with a rubber material, so it's going to shield your hand from cold metal in real cold environments. But thinking about a folder that's going to work for this, I'm thinking a few things. You'd want it to have a real open locking system, not like the lock back, or not like that Axis lock, or the lock back. Because my first thought was, oh, go with something with a rubbery handle for those cold things. Stuff like the Gerber Gator or the Victorinox Hunter Pro. But I'm not sure the lock back's going to be necessarily the most resistant to ice crystals and that sort of thing. Likewise, a liner lock too. So I would go with a frame lock, and I think you want something with washers as opposed to ball bearings, again, for the possibility of ice getting into those ball bearings and clogging things up, freezing things up, not great. And kind of an open back with a very open lock side as well that'll allow you to kind of break out any ice that might be in there. It's not gonna be frozen solid, of course. So I tried to find you something that would kind of be along similar lines maybe to this Benchmade. And I've got a few options for you, but I think I may have gone off the reservation a little bit with my first suggestion. It's not quite like that Benchmade, but I think this knife is a good option nonetheless. The Bastinelli Compact Dragotac frame lock coming in about $250 right now. Now, one of the things I wanted to make sure of, especially if you're going to be wearing thicker gloves to withstand those temperatures, you want it to be easy to operate. And I went with something with a thumb disc here because it's going to be a lot easier than some thumb studs and certainly a lot of thumb holes to grab onto that while wearing gloves and open it up. And there's plenty of lock bar access there to unlock as well. Now, downside of a frame lock in cold weather is you've got that big honking slab of metal there on the back. Not great. So I'm going to at least give you something with G10 on the front to mitigate the front half at least. But this guy has washers in the pivot, so you're not going to have to worry about the bearings getting iced up. Really nice aggressive blade shape, 3 3/4 of an inch D2 full flat grind with that stone washed finish there. Deep carry pocket clip as well. This guy is certainly ready to work. It's a little bit of a heavier duty knife than, or at least a heavier duty feel than that Benchmade has that might work for you. On the budget side, I did throw a budget one in there, even though obviously you're not afraid of spending good money on a pocket knife. But again, something with a thumb disc. This is the Kershaw Emerson CQC 4K coming in at about 39 bucks actually right now. And this is a little bit closer in size to your 940 there. 3 1/4 inches, similar narrow blade, but you've got kind of that spear point as opposed to the reverse Tonto going on. Thumb disc again, Emerson Wave opener for some extra options, your frame lock on the back, your washers in the pivot, G10 on the front. Not a bad option, especially for something you wouldn't be afraid to kind of use, abuse, and lose if you needed to. Not quite as much lock bar access here, but still I think pretty good. Now we could really go high end, and you could get something, actually one of my higher end choices, one of the things I might look to first is either a XM18 or XM24 from Rick Hinderer because, well, first of all, check this bad boy out. KnifeCenter exclusive Sponto shape on Harpoon Sponto on the XM24 coming in just under 600 bucks right now. But it's nice and chunky. You got that nice open frame lock on the back, even more open on the spine than these other two designs. So that's definitely appreciated. Ball bearings installed, but there's washers included when you buy it, so you could swap out to those. The action won't be quite as good as that, but plenty to grab onto there, even if you're wearing gloves, plenty of length, nice hard working, and it's got all the things that I think might come in handy if you're dealing with things icing over like you talked about. All right, last question for today comes from the Spanishiwa. Personal question for you. Do people in the office call you DCA, DC, Dave, David? It's a fun one to end on. Usually just David, I'm just a guy. Sometimes DCA and sometimes, David C. Anderson if they're not into the whole brevity thing. But that's all I've got for today. Remember, folks, leave your questions in the comments if you want a chance to have it featured on a future installment. And let me know if you guys have any alternate answers or suggestions for some of the folks here today. I'm always excited to see what you guys come up with too. It's a lot of fun. If you want to get your hands on any of these knives, we'll leave links in the description to take you over to KnifeCenter.com. And make sure you sign up for our Knife Rewards program as always, because if you're going to spend some money on one of these knives, you might as well earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center, signing off. See you next time.
I just call him the squishy bit in the video.
Bye.